The emperor said that a minister secretary of state was exactly suited for kings without talents, but vain. Who would want the assistance of a prime minister and not like to own it? Had my minister secretary of state been made president of the council of state, said he would have been from that moment a real prime minister in the fullest acceptance of the term, for he would have carried his plans to the council of state to have them digested into laws and would have signed for the prince. There can be no doubt that with the manners and habits of the first race of our kings, or with princes like him, my minister secretary of state would have become in a very short time a mayor of the palace. The 22nd, the emperor resumed his researches respecting Egypt. He gave me Strabo to look over. It was the addition which he had caused to be made. He commended the care and pains bestowed upon it and said that it had been his intention to give us, in the course of time, editions of all the works of the ancients through the official medium of the Institute. Before dinner, the emperor sent for me and my son and spent at least 6 hours with us reading over and recasting the chapters on the Tagliamento, Loban, and Venice. All is fine in these chapters on the campaign of Italy, in that on the Tagliamento we see how one single disposition made on the banks of that river, and hardly noticed one of those movements which the emperor calls the thought of the battle, must inevitably lead to the gates of Vienna. The chapter on Venice is written after the manner of the ancients. However, the last chapter read always seems to be that which pleases most, and I have therefore no doubt that my readers will be obliged to me for having made them acquainted with all that I had left in my hands. I was extremely unwell and very tired, not so much from fatigue occasioned by working as from bodily indisposition. We amused ourselves this evening by reading the description of Ulysses' departure from the island of Calypso and his arrival amongst the Phaeacians. The 23rd, this morning, the emperor, conversing in his room after touching on several subjects, spoke about sentiment, feelings, and sensibility, and having alluded to one of us who, as he observed, never pronounced the name of his mother, but with tears in his eyes, he said, "But is this not peculiar to him? Is this a general feeling? Do you experience the same thing, or am I unnatural in that respect? I certainly love my mother with all my heart. There's nothing that I would not do for her. Yet if I were to hear of her death, I do not think that my grief would manifest itself by a single tear. But I would not affirm that this would be the case if I were to lose a friend or my wife or my son. Is this distinction founded on nature? What can be the cause of it? Is it that my reason has prepared me beforehand to expect the death of my mother as being in the natural course of events, whereas the loss of my wife or my son is an unexpected occurrence, a hardship inflicted by fate, which I endeavor to struggle against? Perhaps also this distinction merely proceeds from our natural disposition to egotism. I belong to my mother, but my wife and my son belong to me." And he went on multiplying the reasons in support of his opinion, with his usual fertility of invention, in which there was always something original and striking, but I cannot find any memorandum of them. It is certain that he was tenderly attached to his wife and son. Those persons who have served in the interior of his household now inform us how fond he was of indulging his feelings of affection towards his family, and point out some shades in his disposition, the existence of which we were far from suspecting at that time. He would sometimes take his son in his arms and embrace him with the most ardent demonstrations of paternal love, but most frequently his affection would manifest itself by playful teasing or whimsical tricks. He met his son in the garden, for instance. He would throw him down or upset his toys. The child was brought to him every morning at breakfast time, and he then seldom failed to besmear him over with everything within his reach on the table. With respect to his wife, not a day passed without her forming part of his private conversations. If they lasted any length of time, she was sure to come in for a share in them, or to become the subject of them. There is no circumstance, no minute particularity relating to her which he has not repeated to me 100 times. Penelope, after 10 years' absence, in order to convince herself that she is not deceived, put some questions to Ulysses, which he alone could answer. "Well, I think that I should not find it difficult to present my credentials to Maria Louise. In the course of the conversation in the evening, the emperor, speaking of different nations, said he only knew of two, the Orientals and the inhabitants of the West. The English, the French, the Italians, said he, compose one family and form the Western Division. They have the same laws, the same manners, the same customs, and differ entirely from the Orientals, particularly with respect to their women and their servants. The Orientals have slaves. Our servants are free. The Orientals shut up their women. Our wives share in all our rights. The Orientals keep a seraglio, but polygamy has never been admitted in the West at any period. There are several other distinctions of the emperor. It is said that as many as 80 have been reckoned. The inhabitants of the East and of the West are therefore, observes the emperor, really two distinct nations. With the Orientals, everything is calculated to enable them to watch over their wives and make sure of them. All our institutions in the West tend, on the contrary, to put it out of our power to watch over ours and to make it necessary for us to rely upon them alone. With us, every man who does not wish to pass for an idiot must have some occupation, and whilst he is attending to his business or fulfilling the duties of his situation, who will watch for him? We must therefore, with our manners, rely entirely on the honor of our women and place implicit confidence in them. For my part, added he good-humoredly, I have had both wives and mistresses, but it never came into my head to use any particular precaution to watch over them, because I thought that it was with these things as with the fear of daggers and poison in certain situations of life. The torment of guarding against them is greater than the danger we wish to avoid. It's better trust one's fate. It is, however, a very great question to decide which is the best method, though probably not for you ladies, said he, casting an arch look upon those that were present. Yet it is certain that it would be a very great error to suppose that the Orientals have fewer enjoyments than we have, and are less happy than we are in the West. In the East, the husbands are very fond of their wives, and the wives are very much attached to their husbands. They have as many chances of happiness as we have, however different they may seem, for everything is conventional amongst men, even in those feelings which one would suppose ought to be dictated by nature alone. Besides, the women in the East have their rights and privileges, as ours have theirs. It would be quite as impossible to prevent them from going to the public bath as it would be to prevent our women from going to church. Both misuse that liberty. You see, therefore, that the imagination, feelings, virtues, and failings of human nature are circumscribed within very narrow compass, and that the same things, with few exceptions and differences, are to be found everywhere. The emperor continued conversing in this manner until after midnight.